Now let's have a look at some of the major similarities and differences between the two types of flash tweening, motion tweening and shape tweening. For this, I'm going to use two objects on my stage. Now, these two objects may look the same, but they're actually not. The one on the left is an instance of a graphic symbol that I have sitting in my library. The one on the right is a simple drawn graphic. And this brings up the first major difference between the two types of tweening. Motion tweening we can only apply to instances of symbols in our library. That is, movie clips or graphic symbols. Shape tweening we can only apply to basic shapes that we've drawn on the stage. Now let's have a look at what we can and cannot do with each type of tweening. Well, one thing we can do with both is simple motion. The boxes move up and back down. Everything works pretty much exactly the same between the two. But motion tweening gives us a little bit more control. We can use motion guides. And up here I have a layer labeled Guide Motion Tweening. That's a guide for this layer. I'll turn on the visibility and we can see that the only thing in this layer is a line. What this line does is controls the path of this object. So as we move through the tween, the object follows the line. And when we export this file, the line is not displayed. Now, another thing that we can't do with shape tweening, or at least with shape tweening alone, is nested animation. I spoke earlier about how we can nest symbols. You have one inside another, and each of these symbols has its own timeline. So you can create an animation on the nested symbol and then animate its container or its parent. Let's have a look at the exported version of this file. And here, in the box on the left, I have a left to right animation. Simply moves the box, and I've nested that inside another animation of a different length that moves the whole assembly up and down. And with motion tweening you can do this as many layers as you want. So we can create complex animation. You can't do that using shape tweening alone. Okay, back to our file. Another thing that we can do with both types of tweening is scale. Play this and you see the horizontal and vertical scale of these objects changes. Notice though that the motion tweening shape now looks a little bit different. The stroke around the outside is thicker. This is because we're tweening the entire shape. In Flash 8 we can keep this appearance the same though, and I'll just turn on my panels and select a stroke over here, and this could be any stroke. In Flash 8 we now have a setting called Scale. You can set this to none, and then when you scale a symbol that contains this line, it will stay the same thickness. Of course we can't see this in the Flash authoring tool. It's only displayed when we export. Okay, panels are gone again, and let's try another type of tween. Again, this is one that we can apply to both of these, but they're applied in different ways. Watch our boxes change color. The tweens may look almost the same, but notice that now the one on the left doesn't have the black border around it. This is because in shape tweening we've only tweened the fill. We haven't tweened the outside stroke. In motion tweening, the only thing we can do is color the entire object. And this includes the stroke around the outside, so it's turned red as well. We can rotate things using both motion and shape tweening, although oftentimes they behave differently. And here's one that we can only do with shape tweening. The name gives it away. We can make things change their shape. This includes changing perspective, which is one thing that we can't do to instances of symbols at all, even if we're not tweening. You can't change the perspective. We can skew it, but that's about it. Now, let's have a look at a recap. The only objects that we can apply motion tweening to are instances of symbols. And likewise, we can only apply shape tweening to basic drawn shapes on our stage. We can apply movement to both, but in shape tweening we're limited. We can't use motion guides and we can't use full nested animation. In a similar fashion, we can apply scale to both, but we have to be careful about the appearance of our strokes when we're using motion tweening. Again, we can apply color tweening, but similar to scale, the appearance of the stroke is going to change. With shape tweening, the name gives it away. We can tween the shapes, but we can't in motion tweening. We can only apply nested tweening using motion tweening. We can only create nested tweening using motion tweening on symbols. And another thing that I haven't mentioned yet is saving file size. One of the biggest ideas in creating symbols and instances is that we can reuse them. We can change their color even, or their size, or their scale, and we can keep reusing them throughout the movie, thus saving file size. Obviously, you can't do that with basic drawn shapes, so we don't have that advantage.